Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here. This video is going to be quite different than most videos. In this video, I am going to be sharing a lecture I gave at the Hutchings Museum in Lehi, Utah in January of 2026. I've been the biology consultant for Skinwalker Ranch for the past 6 or 7 years, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about. But I asked permission of the ranch owner, Brandon Fugal, to talk about several of the really amazing things that have happened on the ranch, things that are not in the public knowledge, and so I wanted to get the information out. So I first did most of this content in September of 2025 at the Phenomicon convention, but they wouldn't let me record that. So we redid it at the museum with permission and permission to release this information out to the public. So my hope is that you will share this video and get people talking about the subject. I would love to hear your theories. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? I'm just sharing what I have observed, conducting biological surveys and experiments on the ranch, and take it as you will. But I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you learn a thing or two, and I hope we get a lot of these topics more prominently in the general discussion of the public. So we're going to go ahead and watch this, and let me know your comments at the end. And if you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe, I very much appreciate it. And here we go, a lecture on the Skinwalker Ranch.
Without further ado, here we go, Ben.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to cover a whole lot of stuff. So I've been the biology consultant, the biologist on the ranch for the past 6-7 years, which had nothing to do with the TV show, and there wasn't a TV show at all. Let's kind of do a zoom in here. We'll take a look. This is where Skinwalker Ranch is. It's on Earth. Wow, look at that. So, but Skinwalker Ranch is in the Uinta Basin. It's a whole spooky place, the whole valley it's at anyways. But I'm gonna give you, if you have no idea what Skinwalker Ranch is, I'm gonna start off and give you kind of a brief history of the ranch itself, and then we're gonna share some of my biological observations that I've done on the ranch. If you watch a TV show, it seems like most of the time we're just launching rockets. But there's a lot of stuff that's happening all the time there. And so if you look at this image, you see there's kind of a ridge. If you watch a TV show, it's good storytelling. This is really close to civilization, but it's also really remote at the same time. It's hard to say. It's right by the Native American reservation, the Ute reservation there, but that ridge and then all the way down to that river there is basically where the ranch is. Okay, so the first thing, it's a 512-acre ranch. And why is it called Skinwalker Ranch? Well, because the path of the Skinwalker goes through it. What is that? You see that red line going up and down? That is the quote-unquote path of the Skinwalker, as the tribes have told us. It also happens to follow a fence line where tons of crazy stuff constantly happens, where the cattle die, where the magpies build weird nests, where all kinds of crazy stuff. We'll get into it in a second. The big red line around the top, that is basically kind of the rough boundaries of the reservation up above. And the oval is roughly the ranch. It's shaped differently than that, but that's roughly the ranch. So this path of the Skinwalker goes through there. Why is it? I don't want to get into the politics of it, but needless to say, the Utes and the Navajo, or the Diné, back in the day, had some bad blood between them. I'm not going to get into all the how and the why, but it resulted in the Navajo cursing the lands of the Utes, and with the curse of the Skinwalker, and cursing up from the south through the path of the Skinwalker up to where the Utes are. And in fact, you see that weird lake, it's mostly frozen, but that's Bottle Hollow. It's a man-made lake. UFOs come out of that thing. I know it sounds stupid, I'm just reporting. Weird stuff happens in this man-made lake that the path of the Skinwalker goes through. So, well, what is a Skinwalker? Well, you always see this. You always see this kind of image. And Skinwalker is a nebulous term nowadays. It wasn't. Skinwalker originally, now, by the way, if you don't have a written history, written scripture, written law, then your personal interpretation is always valid as a person of that people. So if you talk to anybody from any of these tribes, you might hear a different story. But roughly speaking, a Skinwalker is usually like a dark medicine man who, in order to connect with that dark magic, does something terrible that usually involves killing a family member. And then, as such, they're imbued with powers from beyond to do things like take on the skin of an animal and become that animal, to be a shapeshifter. You don't talk about skinwalkers. If you go to these tribes, both Ute or Navajo, you don't talk about it. It's bad juju, bad medicine to talk about. So nowadays, it's kind of a nebulous term. Anything that's kind of black magic, dark, paranormal, weird, creepy, ooga booga is sort of given the term skinwalker. But this is originally what it was. But again, the curse, again, because of things that were happening between the Utes and the Navajo cursed the Ute land with the path of the Skinwalker that runs through Skinwalker Ranch in a very specific place. Okay, we'll get to him in a second. So let's talk about your tax dollars here. Okay, so who owned the ranch? What is this ranch? Well, it has thousands of years of history. We have, and the season coming out now should have some of the archaeology. We have Ice Age people living there all the way up through modern days. There's petroglyphs on the ranch. There's archaeological digs. People have been there forever. And the tribes in the area in historic times all share that it's a spooky place. Weird, bad juju stuff happens there. So we're going to dates here. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman bought the ranch. They wanted it to be a cattle ranch. And they were going to raise these big, giant, fancy cattle breeds. And they immediately started having things happen, like cattle mutilations, where you go out, you're tagging the cattle, and you turn around, and suddenly there's a cow that's dead, and it's eviscerated, and it's like surgically cut, missing bones. It's like, I was just like 2 minutes ago looking there. How did this happen? Where's the blood? Crazy, creepy things. The Shermans went half an hour into town, came back. All the cattle were gone. They looked everywhere on the ranch. And then they went and looked inside one of these big old semi-trucks, and all the cattle were like stacked up in there, alive, like catatonic. And they brought the sheriffs out, and they opened it up, and the cattle came out. It's like, how did you range up all of our cattle and get them to go stack up in there? So it made the news. If you remember back in the 90s, it was making it in the news, stuff that was happening at Skinwalker Ranch. And it was freaking them out so much that... And so they technically owned it from 94 to 96. In 96, it was purchased by this guy, Robert Bigelow. Robert Bigelow is a real estate tycoon, and he runs Bigelow Aerospace, which is top-notch air and space equipment and cutting-edge airplanes and spacecraft. And he's like, well, him and his wife had a UFO encounter, and they're like, well, we want to know what's going on with this ranch, so let's buy it, and let's see what we can do about this. So here's the stats, and here's something you should know if you're a taxpayer. So George Knapp testified to Congress last year about this fact. So there is a government organization called OSAP, which stands for the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program. Government, right? It was run by Dr. James Lukatsky and Robert Bigelow, his friends. He's a government contractor. He's making planes for the government. And he said, hey, this is to Congress. You can look in these congressional records. He testified that, well, Lockheed supposedly had some retrieved non-human technology, some UFOs or something like that had just been sitting on since the 50s and had done nothing with it. He was aware of it, and he said, hey, we want to take a crack at it. We want Bigelow Aerospace to take a crack at seeing what we can do with this material. So we're a government contractor. I'm going to start a new subcontract. It's just called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science. And we would like you to donate $22 million to let us take this stuff from Lockheed and study it ourselves for the sake of the government. The government said yes. Senator Harry Reid, Senator Daniel Inouye, and Senator Ted Stevens said, yes, $22 million. Here you go. And it was all, and now $5 million of that was supposed to go to study Skinwalker Ranch. All the rest was supposed to be reverse engineering this stuff. It went up the ladder, approved. They were starting to build this laboratory at Bigelow Aerospace to be able to research this stuff. And again, this is on congressional record. You can go, you're a taxpayer, look it up yourself. You can see this, testifying to Congress about this. So at the very tail end, two head government people who are off the record in their names said, nope, not doing this. So instead, all of that money went to studying Skinwalker Ranch. So throughout the 90s, from 1996 to 2016, Senator Harry Reid got Skinwalker Ranch funded. So your taxpayer dollars were going to our government researching what happens on the ranch. We don't know all that happened. Very little of that has come out. Well, in our time, in 2016, our local hero, Brandon Fugal, bought the ranch. Now, he was a skeptical person. You don't want to be a skeptic. A skeptic is no different than a believer. If you're a believer, then you're never going to question anything. If you're a skeptic, you're never going to believe anything. Be skeptical. Be believing. Don't be a skeptic. Don't be a believer. Be someone who is believing. Be someone who is skeptical and always opening to hearing and learning more. He was skeptical. He bought the ranch, and he's like, I can get this figured out. I'll put good teams on this, and we'll figure this out in no time. It's probably a bunch of crock, a bunch of hooey. And it wasn't. And he had his own experiences. He's like, wow. So he started bringing people onto the ranch, different experts for different fields, people he trusted. And Brandon is a big, huge fan of this museum. And so he started inviting me out because I've worked in all kinds of different fields that overlap in strange ways. And he's like, well, let's have Ben start looking at stuff. And then I found so much stuff that they're finally like, well, we got to put him on the show. So, but I've been doing this for years. Now, this man lives on the ranch. This is Eric Bard. Forget the show. The show is entertaining, and it gets some of the information out. It's a good show. But this man lives on the ranch all the time, even away from his family. And he puts so many hours in researching this ranch, and he's just helping people. And you can get online and be part of the insiders, which sounds like a gimmick, but he can't read all the cameras all the time. So there's people now you can get online and help see things on the camera and report it and say, look, here's what we saw, here we see. So that's a little background. Oh, went too far there. Woo! So that's a little background about the ranch itself. It's a weird place, and the interesting thing about it is that all the areas of science do not correlate. The biological things do not correlate with really UFOs. There are people who claim that they saw portals. Even in the 90s, our government, one of the reports says they saw a portal thing open up and this animal come through it. That's the dumbest sounding thing I've ever heard. That sounds ridiculous. It's a government report. They're just reporting what they're filming and seeing. All these weird things that happen on the ranch, paranormal type stuff, ghost type stuff, cattle mutilations, animals from the past, a lot of Ice Age animals, and a lot of things that will be described similar to something like a velociraptor. That sounds ridiculous, okay? And so I'm like, well, you're going to invite me out? I want to experience this stuff firsthand. I want to know for me. I want to use my own equipment, and I want to do my own tests, and I want to know what's what. So my first day, I go to the ranch, and there by the front gate, there's a dead rabbit. Now, dead stuff teaches. Bones, skeletons, bodies, biology follow certain rules. When you die, your gastrointestinal bacteria go like, oh no, they're not eating more food for us to consume in the stomach. Well, let's start eating the stomach lining, and then you bloat. That's why things bloat. This thing did not bloat. 3 days, first day, second day, third day, fourth day, no flies, no scavengers, no ravens, no magpies, no crows, no vultures, no eagles, no coyotes, no foxes, no raccoons, nothing touched it. I picked it up, wiggle, 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 soft. It was like a fresh dead rabbit. No rigor mortis, the tendons never did anything. It never dried. It never stank. The fire ants never started eating it. Nothing would touch it. And so finally, I snapped a picture. This is back in the day where I'm like, oh, I'm on the ranch. Oh, can I snap a picture? Oh. I was so timid back then. Now it's like, take a million pictures of photos and videos. But I didn't know back then. So this is the only picture I have of it. On the fourth day, when I was going to leave, it was gone. There were no tracks anywhere, and it was just gone, just randomly, okay? Eric Bard, the man I showed you who lives on the ranch, he wanted to study, one of his thoughts, he thought, I wonder if there's maybe like psychedelic mushrooms or some sort of mind-altering presence on there. And I thought, oh, it could be a possibility too. That's why I've documented cordyceps on the ranch. Cordyceps are mushrooms, well, they're not mushrooms, they're a spore that gets into the brain of life forms, insects, and it takes over their brain. That's where you get like the Walking Dead idea, right? And then they climb up to a high place and they latch on. There's even an X-Files episode on it if you're that old. And you latch on, and then and then it either explodes out your brain or out your butt, and all those spores go out from that high point. So if it happens to an ant, then the ants will take it away from the colony because it doesn't want to infect the colony. I started finding this with grasshoppers and cicadas. So there are cordyceps, that's worth noting, but I don't think they're impacting our human minds. But that was worth noting that there are cordyceps on the ranch. Okay, here's a happy dead skunk. So my first week on the ranch, I found a dead skunk. Now he looks pretty lifelike. He almost looks like a taxidermy fellow there. Little face sticking out there. And so I took some pictures of it. Came back a month later, he was still there. Came back a year later, he was still there. 2 years later, he's still there. He never, ever decomposed at all. I poked him. I didn't pick him up. It was a skunk. He smelled like a skunk. But I poked him, and he was always squishy. He never rotted. He never bloated. And microbes inside or outside never broke him down. Skunks, you guys know the story. You know the story. Yeah, skunks, the collagens in the fur, when they die, there is a different chemical reaction that happens, and the collagen, the hairs come apart. They just, within a day or two, come apart from the skin. Didn't happen. The dermal tissue just held on to it. For 3 years, it just looked like this. And so we're like, Eric and I one day were like, well, let's do, we're not for the show, but let's just document this. So we sat down with our phones and filmed it, and we're like, and turned it over, and it's still the same. Went over to it the next day, after 3 years. The next day, it was gone, and the tuft of fur, this is the tuft of fur, was wedged up in that homestead right there, the old ruins there. There was another tuft on the ground, and in its place where the skunk had been was this. Now, this is a perfectly decomposed foot, not from a skunk. This is a smaller rodent, probably like a prairie dog or a Uinta ground squirrel, something that's a potgut, something that size. But the ranch, so here's the rule we found out. If you are small deer, coyote size, or maybe like a small deer or smaller, the laws of decomposition, which is called taphonomy, don't apply at all. If you are bigger than that, the rules do apply. You will decompose, but other stuff happens that you'll see in a minute. So this is weird. And to me, and I hated it before when people were telling me about the ranch. Oh, the ranch wants this, or the ranch doesn't like that. I'm like, what do you say? It's a geographical area. It doesn't have wishes. It doesn't have intentions. The ranch doesn't like that you're here. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The problem is once you're on the ranch and once you see these phenomena happening, there's no vocabulary to describe it. So what you find is that the religious people start using scientific terms. The scientists start using religious terms because they're both lacking a vocabulary to discuss these things. And that's what happened. So all I can say is, if you go on to the ranch and if you have bravado, if you're like, this is a bunch of crap, it's dumb, I'm going to disprove this, you will get attacked. People literally get attacked. They'll have, like Thomas Winterton, his brain, he almost died. Like lots of people almost died. Lots of people have been radiated. Lots of bad things have happened to people. Lots of people have had heart problems. Not me. I had cardiac arrest and died, but not on the ranch. So I got heart issues, and it never bothered me because I've come on the ranch kind of like, well, let's learn. What do you want to teach me? People Eric's the same way. Eric's never been attacked. He comes on and just, what do you want to teach me? I take this. And again, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, fine. But this was as if it was saying, oh, you and Eric are going to document that I can't decompose something. I'll show you. Blam, perfectly decomposed leg the next day, even though it wasn't from the skunk. So, kind of interesting. Okay, birds. Okay, so big animals, one set of rules. Little animals, another set of rules. Birds, kooky duke off the chart. This is an oriole. I don't have photos of this. You can see this if you watch the show. This is a diagram. So this bird is an oriole. They brought me an oriole body. It looked normal. When I opened up the legs, this is what it was like. The blue is tissue and bone. The black are empty spaces. It was just like, there's bone, gap, bone, gap, bone, gap. The tendons still ran the full length, but there were gaps in the bone. This is number 1, impossible. Number 2, no injury could cause it. Number 3, no bacteria or virus could cause it. And number 4, if a living animal had this, it wouldn't be able to function, it wouldn't be able to stand. So I couldn't even see this until I cut open the legs and saw inside. that is on the TV show. What isn't on the TV show? Well, that is. We're going to talk about that. Starling. They brought me a starling. And, okay, I'll stick with this picture. The starling was squishy. Again, no decomposition. And it stayed squishy the whole time. Every time I go to the ranch, squishy, squishy. It was just like a doggy chew toy. Totally squishy. No smell, no stink, no rigor mortis setting in. So we're like, well, that's cool. Every time I visit, document that again. Then I took it off the ranch, and it started to decompose once it was off the ranch. Now, again, that's ridiculous. Think about it. Like, actually think. Now, that may not make for good TV, but that defies all the I want to be rooted in reality. What are the laws that we are playing with? What are the laws of reality? The ranch disobeys whatever those rules are. So apparently, the rules we think we know are not the actual rules. Because apparently, when you go to a man-made geographic region and then you leave, suddenly decomposition starts. So the skull started to rot and smell, and these bubbles started to appear that kind of looked like the La Brea tar pits in miniature. They were kind of black, viscous, kind of shiny, and they would bubble up. And I'm like, what is that? I'd take tweezers, put on my rubber gloves, go to pull it out, and it would pop. But when it popped, it left no residue. This happened 5, 6, 7 times, and finally I'm like, nobody's going to believe me. I better get some photos. So these are some photos. I got one more zoomed in. Again, it's not the best photo, but I don't know what these are. These don't correlate with any normal decomposition behavior of any microbes, but this is just something that happened. Now, we also had screech owls that they brought me, a dead screech owl. It was soft. When I opened it up, the keel bone was gone. Just think about a Thanksgiving turkey. That big old, the breastbone, right? That was gone. The wishbone was gone. The femurs were gone. The bird was not opened up. There were just bones missing. That's ridiculous. That if you had a UFO fly over and aliens got out and said hi, tell me what laws of physics are being broken. Oh, because there are aliens. That's astounding, but it's not breaking any laws of physics. This is actually breaking the known laws of science. There's no laws against there being aliens out there visiting us. There's no laws against that. Okay? This doesn't make sense. This is actually more profound to our existential understanding of reality. Okay, this one, I don't know why, but everybody should be talking about this all the time. I forgot about this. And at Phenomicon, somebody raised their hand and said, hey, Ben, yeah? So, why is it that nobody's talking about the fact in season 1, a UFO in broad daylight flies over a cow, and then the cow buckles and dies underneath it? And I'm like, yeah! Why aren't we talking about that all the time? Like, this is really weird. So, here you go. Look at that. Now, unfortunately, this is early cameras that they had on the ranch. But broad daylight, this UFO appears over this cow, and then on screen, the cow dies. When they went over to the cow to examine it, it was dead, and it had dangerous levels of radiation, enough to the point where if you watch the show, they're like, let's get out of here. They all have their little Geiger counter weird thingies, and it's not my field. And they all run off, and they come back later on, and it's back down to normal radiation levels. That also is impossible. If you ever had a medical treatment where you get radiated, you know everything you sit on or touch is also radiated. Radiation isn't transient. So this cow, and then the thing flew off. I'm going to kill you, cow, and then flies away. Like, I don't know what that is. Some unidentified thing, and it hovered over the cow. The cow buckled and died. Now, here's what's really strange. The cow, so mammals, when we die, our tendons, when they dry, we curl forward. If you look at mummies that are natural, they curl forward. Birds and dinosaurs are the opposite. They go, right? We call it the dinosaur death pose. This is what the cow did. It did the dinosaur death pose. You look at that. That is not a normal position for me. And if you watch the show, that's not the position the cow was in. The cow died, and it did start to decompose, but post-decomposition, it did this wackadoodle shape. And again, this is in paleontology what we call the dinosaur death pose. So I don't believe that the cow had a skeletal and tendon structure like a dinosaur, but whatever happened, it responded in a way like a dinosaur did. So very, very strange. Okay, the dermestid beetles also, so dermestid beetles are incredible. You guys have a colony one right now. Dermestid beetles are a museum specimen provider best friend. Once the gooey stuff is gone and you're done to the dry stuff, you got jerky on your bone, dermestid beetles clean it super nice, and then you just, kind of peroxide it off. They all, anywhere. You go put a chicken bone in your yard, within a week or two, you're going to have dermestid beetles there. They'll take care of it. They come out of nowhere. They find it. No dermestid beetles touch this cow. I did a necropsy and gathered so many, there were weird little green beetles that I've never seen before, but there were no dermestids anywhere. I have never seen that happen. I don't know how it decomposed, because this is 2 months after the cow died. They had me come out to check it out, so that was strange. Okay, the bone, that's on the show. So one of the rib bones, I noticed, had a bite mark through it. Now, if you're not familiar with predatory animals, that's not exciting to you. You're like, yeah, okay, and the bite. No! You don't go around biting bones. Teeth are delicate. You don't bite through bones. Now, the animals that do, there are some animals, like we know hyenas love to eat bones. A lot of animals will try to break a bone off to get marrow and to get some calcium. They use their back teeth. So if you look on, here's a cougar. You got these front pointy teeth, you got these back teeth that are sharp, but they're for crunching. If you are going to break off a bone, then you are going to snap and break and eat it like a little pretzel or something. There are bites like that on the bottom of this bone. Okay, something did bite, chomping things off. But the bite through it has a conchoidal fracture, which means it goes in this way and it has a cone coming out the other way. Like if you shoot a BB gun through a glass, right? Conchoidal fracture. That means this bite happened with tremendous force. It wasn't a crunch. It was a very powerful, quick, intense bite. And whatever did that is very unusual, because that is not the way any of our local predators would handle a bone. As you can see, other things have like broken off chunks, but somebody bit all the way through. We don't have anything that has the power and the pointiness to do that. We have animals with the pointiness like a cougar, but they don't have the bite force to chomp through it. And we have things like a black bear that have the bite force to do it, but they have these round, posty teeth. They're not sharp. So I went back and I tested it, and I tested those measured it on all different kinds of animals that we have in the area. On black bears, on coyotes, on foxes, on things that things like pine martens, all these things. And the only skulls that matched up were a dire wolf, which is extinct. It's an Ice Age mega predator we had here. By the way, if you ever look at a skull, you have to imagine muscle and skin and tendon over. They're always way bigger than you're looking at. So a dire wolf or the jaguar. Jaguar has the strongest bite force of any cat for its size. You see this line here? This is called the sagittal crest. The bigger this is, the stronger the bite force you have, because the muscles, the anchor that close your jaw, attach to that sagittal crest. So I said it when they recorded me. I'm like, the only things that match out of everything are a dire wolf or a jaguar. And actually, it matches a jaguar better. And they didn't put that in the show. They just like, oh, dire wolf, it sounds like a regular wolf, but dire. Ooh, that sounds exciting. We're going to run with that. But who knows what it is? Who knows what it was? So, we were testing it and I was showing them. But this is a dire wolf and a black bear. Now, these guys, it's interesting. A bear and a wolf, about the same size skull. So the bear can smell better, as you can see. But look at the sagittal crest on the wolf. The bear has a bigger brain, but the wolf has a triple or quadruple more of a bite force, because it has that bigger sagittal crest, and that area is filled with the muscles that close. That's the kind of bite. So not only does a black bear not have the pointy teeth, it doesn't have the bite force to pop a hole. If a black bear chomped through that rib bone, it would have just been crunched. it wouldn't be a nice pop like that. So as we're talking about this stuff, I took teeth of black bears, coyotes, wolves. I didn't have a jaguar, but we took a bunch of different teeth, put them in a drill press, and just did a press test with an expansion to see what force can go through. We took a second rib. That's in the freezer in the back room. We took a second rib and said what compares through. All of them shattered, as you can see, when we did the test. All the teeth when they couldn't go through it. So dire wolves and gray wolves. Dire wolves are bigger. They're grossly exaggerated in the media. They were bigger than a gray wolf, but not that much bigger. They're bigger. So dire wolves and gray wolves were both here during the Ice Age. Dire wolves are extinct. Gray wolves are still here. But they're famous because of media and like Game of Thrones, which I haven't even seen, but everybody's like, yeah, dire wolves, man. People like that. Okay, but jaguars, what about them? Nobody talks about them. Oh, they're from the tropics, right? No, they're not. For over 1 million years, they lived from Canada to Argentina. And over the past 10,000 years, they've had a huge range reduction. We used to have 2 of them, a giant jaguar and a regular jaguar. These are 2 species, cousins, that lived alongside each other. Now just the little one's still around. And we'll get more into jaguars in a bit. Okay. The ranch will give you, if you come in there with a good attitude, I know it sounds so dumb. I don't have the vocabulary. I'm just sharing you. I'm being casual about it because I don't have the words to do it justice. The ranch behaves. I know a ranch can't have an attitude, but the ranch acts as if it does, okay? And it acts as if you come in with bravado, you get attacked. If you come in with a curious mind and you just want to learn, then it will give you stuff, and it will give you renditions of what you want to see, and it will give you what you're looking for, sometimes in very uncanny ways. And this is one of the weirdest ones for me. Showed up to the ranch, and the producer came out. We go walking across, and we both look down. There's a dead quail. There's another dead quail just right there in front of us. I pick one up, floppy, soft. This is a dead summer. And Caleb and Brandon both said, yeah, they weren't there in the night. We walked through here, and so somehow it happened right before I got there. Boom, boom, 2 dead quail. This is the male. This is the female, right by each other. And I want you to notice, look at the face. I should have done a picture zoomed in. The upper beak is bashed in. The lower beak is not. That is impossible. The upper beak overlaps the lower beak. And so for it to bash in, it would bash in both. The female, the same. I hope you can see it. It's the same. Upper and lower beak. Lower mandible is out. The upper mandible is curled and jammed in. They're both dead. Neither one stank. Neither one rigor mortis said it. And I'm like, well, hey, let's do an experiment here. They're right here on the ground, right where we park. We put a little ring of rocks around them. So, okay, nobody do anything. We're just going to leave them here. They were 2 feet from a red fire ant hill. We're like, well, let's see what the fire ants do. 3 days of fire ants, nothing touched it. No predators, no scavengers. They didn't stink. Rigor mortis never stayed in. They stayed floppy. They stayed pliable. The ants wouldn't touch it. Finally, when I went to pick them up before I was going to leave, I did watch one ant come over, crawl up on it, and it went over to the eye, and it kind of like tasted near the eye, and it like, nah, and it ran away. And they left it alone the rest of the day. I packed them up, and they're in the freezer at the ranch right now. I haven't done any necropsies on them yet, but it's crazy. Like, it's kind of like the ranch is like, you want dead stuff? Here you go. Here's some dead stuff, little man. Over the ranch, this isn't biology, but the clouds are weird, and they usually are. If you get off the ranch, the road that runs, north-south, that's just a little east of the ranch, if you go down that road and then turn towards the ranch, you'll see it's almost like a bubble. This might just be strictly geology. It might just be that the geology and the geography compresses air right over the ranch, but you'll see it like, and it forms this weird stuff. Or it could be something really trippy and paranormal. I don't know. I'm just showing you what the clouds do over the ranch. And nobody ever talks about that either because it's not as exciting as shooting rockets in the sky. Okay. So I decided, well, let's do a gamble here and let's do some biosensors. So I train birds of prey. So this is my great horned owl Shadow. I brought her on the ranch. And I also brought, this is Pepper, barn owl. I brought them out and I said, let's be really careful about this. We're not going to fly them, but let's see what they see. Owls can hear in 3 dimensions. Their ear openings, one's higher, one's lower. The feathers around the facial disc can shift and adjust so they can fine-tune the way sound waves hit them. They also see in spectrums of light and color that we do not see. So if you shine a black light at an owl, most of them are like pink and purple and striped and weird looking. They see that on each other. We don't see it. So they see things we don't see. They hear in ways we don't hear. I brought both these birds to the ranch, and they were like, oh, like looking around, oh, like they were seeing things. It was wild. We've done paranormal investigations here at the museum, and we've done the same thing. We're like, bring owls around. They're like, oh, they're like seeing stuff. So it's interesting. It doesn't prove anything conclusively, but it was an interesting approach, kind of seeing what do the animals experience there. So then we decided to take it up a notch. This is my friend John Griggs. Him and I, we said, let's take our falcons. So we grabbed our peregrine falcons. We brought them to the ranch. Let's try flying them. So we usually use radio transmitters, but we also put 3D GPS transmitters on that will show like over a Google Earth image map, like a 3D pathway thing. Now, the company that does that is Marshall Radio. They're here in Utah. They also provide the GPS for government drones. So when the government flies a drone, an enemy can knock it down with like an EMP gun, like do the impulse over, knock it out of the sky. So they buy these transmitters to put on the government drones because it won't impact the transmitter. So we're like, okay, let's try this. So first we went over and we flew the falcon over. We're going to fly the bird through the triangle. So Eric and I went. If you're not familiar with the ranch, there's an area we call the triangle. It's just a random area, but it kind of forms a triangle and weird stuff happens there. Weird anomalies happen. It seems like an epicenter of where everything happens. So we get up on the hill, and the GPS said that Eric and I were jumping up in the air thousands of feet, hundreds of feet, like 300 feet, 200 feet, 100 feet, 300 feet, and we're like, we're just standing here. We fly the bird through the triangle. When it went through the triangle, the radio receiver flared up. Got all the static. GPS just was normal, but the second the bird was on the ground, it said that John was jumping up in the air, like going hundreds of feet. So we did it a second time, same thing happened, and we're like, well, let's try something different. So we went all the way to the east field, start flying the bird. The bird's going up thousands of feet, circling up, doing great, and then we try to call it down, and it would come down and come into the lure, and right before it would catch it, would freak out. We didn't know why, and it kept freaking out, would not touch the ground. It's like, okay. So then the bird started circling up again, even though we're trying to call it down, and all of a sudden the GPS started missing blips, and like where it's going. It's like missing blip, going, missing blip, and all of a sudden on camera the bird disappears. We have phones filming it. We have the TV show people are filming it. The bird disappears, and John's like, "My falcon! What you do to my bird?" Then we're like, Immediately it reappears on the GPS, and it's over the triangle, about a mile away, immediately. And we're like, we go running over there. The GPS said that the bird went through the mesa, and now that it's out, the bird is moving, and the bird's movements are accurate on the GPS, but now the GPS is off by about a half mile. Everywhere it goes is met. The radio receiver was perfect. It was like once we got a radio signal again, was spot on where it should be. We call the bird back, the bird was just fine. Now, if you go back and see this, where this took place, if you watch the TV show, there's an episode where they show this white glowing orb seems to go in the mesa over the east field. And there's another episode where Brandon's flying over in the helicopter, and you see this white glowing orb come out of the mesa over towards the triangle. Those are the exact same spots where this GPS stopped and started again. So why is it not on the show? Well, the editors were like, well, let's put this in the next season and claim it was this season because we have so much to fill in. I'm like, okay, whatever. But then there were people in those shots who were not on the show anymore. So like, well, we can't do it now. I'm like, you had a bird that seems to have flown through the mesa, traveling through space and time. Why are you not putting this on the show? It seems like that should be important. But, and I've been sitting on this for 6 stinking years. And they're like, well, we might put it in the show. And finally, I'm like, Brandon, can I please have permission to talk about this one? Because this is really big. And he gave me permission. And so it's been out since September, thankfully. Okay. On that north-south running axis, the path of the Skinwalker, that's the line right next to the main homestead, that's where the cow died. The UFO shows up and a cow buckles and dies under. That's where the cow died the next year, about a mile down the road, but on that same fence, like buckled and died. And I'm like, look at the magpie nests. The magpie nests there. You can't see in these images because these are just things I took with my phone. But so a magpie nest is a very specific nest. They first make a mud nest. It looks like a robin nest. It's mud and clay and grass. And then around it, they build a stick nest with walls and a ceiling and a side door. It's a very specific, very recognizable nest. These guys were doing that sideways, so the eggs and the babies would keep falling out. They were building it right, but it's like they had the directions right, but the angle wrong. And they kept doing that year after year after year. We don't know why, but I'm like, this is on that same path of the Skinwalker, or whatever that is, the same spot. So whatever's going on, this is very unusual. So then Dragon, that's kind of a graphic picture if you don't know what it is. Like, what am I looking at? You're looking at a fish. So Dragon went and did some fishing, and he caught a little catfish, and he's like, hey, you always want dead stuff here. Why don't you do a necropsy on this? Tell me what you think. So I cut it open. Everything's fine. And then I get down to the dorsal pathway there along the spine, and it's all red, and it looks very much like iron. All the rest of the tissue, all the rest of the flesh was just normal fish muscle. But right along the spine, opened up, and it was like iron. And I'm like, that looks so much like iron. I got to test it. So I got a magnet, and yup, it was magnetic. Whatever was inside of it was magnetic. So Travis brought up the point. He wasn't suggesting this was, but he brought up the point that modern medicine is now doing a thing where some of the medications they put iron in it, and they use a magnet to guide it to the place where it needs to be. I don't know what, I'm not in the medical field, but he's like, okay, this is a technology that we're experimenting with in humanity, but this is a random fish that Dragon caught doing some night fishing in Dry Gulch Creek. So again, this is an anomaly. This isn't like the ranch showing us something. This is just some strange artifact of the ranch itself. So kind of strange. Okay. All right, where are we at here? Dead birds, dead cow, bite through the bone. Okay. Okay. Oh, got the clouds. Make sure. Okay. We're on track here. All right. So one of the teams went down the river, and they had some kayaks they were pulling along, and they had equipment on top of it. So they were not boating. They were just like dragging our equipment. Along the way, they found this dead thing, and it stank. They're like, what is this? Is it inside of an old dog or something? This is disgusting. It stinks so bad. Well, maybe Ben would want it. Let's get the skull. So they took a machete, and they hacked off the skull, put it in a bag. Thank goodness they did. But they assumed it was just some old dog, and they didn't want it, So thankfully they at least did that. And then 2 weeks later, they bring it to me, and I'm like, my goodness, that by size and shape and number of teeth looks like a subadult dire wolf. That's what it looked like. And they only gave me, it was just a lower jaw. And I'm like, go back and get the rest of it. Please. And they're like, well, okay. They went back. The rest of the skull had washed down the river. So they got me the rest of the skeleton, and it was so rank, they put it all in like a quadruple garbage bag, and then they froze it. So they gave me this frozen block, and they're like, here, take your stinky dog. So I thawed it out in my yard, the rest of it. We'll get to this shot in a second. I thawed it out in my yard and in my garden bed, and it's decomposing in very strange ways, like weird white, I don't know, it looks like kind of like styrofoam. If like styrofoam crystallized all over the outside, almost like a weird soapy crystal formed all over it, and I scraped those off. So I'm going to get it all out and share what we have eventually, but I've just been too busy to do that. But so we're like, well, what is this? Could we do a DNA test? So we took the tooth, and I gave it to somebody. I don't even remember who, and then it disappeared. I think somebody stole it. So they're like, we need another tooth. I'm like, ugh. So I got the next biggest tooth, and I shipped it off. They had me send it to a genetics lab. We'll get to that in a second. So And I didn't know who it was going to at first, and I'm like, dear whoever, this might be from a direwolf. It probably isn't, but it looks like one. Direwolves lived here during the Ice Age, blah, blah, blah. And thinking I'm giving them a little bit of education. What I didn't realize, it was going to Colossal Bioscience, which is the world premier genetics lab. They're the ones who brought back direwolves recently in the news. They're the ones that are working to bring back woolly mammoths and dodos, okay? And they were like, little boy, they're like, yes, we know direwolves. We've sequenced several of their genomes. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't know it was you guys. So I'll get to what the genetic results were in a minute. But when I brought the jaw back to the ranch, I had it in a little Tupperware bin, little short thing, lid open, no lid, just a little paper towel sitting there. And they're like, hey, Ben, come on, we're having lunch. Why don't you set that outside? So I left it on a little table right next to the trailer. And when I came back out, this is what was all over it. Look at these lacerations all over it, including underneath it. Every side of it had these lacerations. I'm like, this is maybe 10 to 12 minutes. It wasn't moved. The container wasn't moved. It was in the exact position I had left it in because I didn't want to touch it. I mean, see rubber gloves. I don't want to touch it with my bare hands. So I knew the exact position it was in because I was showing them. And I thought, could it be like a rodent somehow? But you look at it, they're not in concentric lines. Rodents have 4 front incisors and, 2 top, 2 bottom incisors. And you can see the patterns are all over the place on these things. I don't know what formed these. I have no idea how it could have happened, but it happened in 12 minutes in daylight while we were just a few feet away from it. And they were undisturbed. I don't know what to think. So this is what I mean. This ranch is weird. This isn't ever going to make it in a show. Got to launch a rocket. That's more exciting. Let's go burn something. Let's blow something up and do a test that's showy and interesting to the general public. But this is ridiculous. This is uncanny. Okay, so the DNA results came back. And Colossal was like, well, 10 or give or take 11%. Basically, 10% of it was gray wolf. So we can confidently say it was the type of gray wolf. And I'm like, so what about the 90%? The 90% is something else. You're not going to talk about that? 10% is like beyond the minimum. How could you? So first of all, let's talk about that 10%. The 10 or 11% was gray wolf, but it was not American gray wolf. It was Greenland gray wolf and Eurasian gray wolf. They don't live here, and they don't live with each other, okay? Now, we're not supposed to have wolves in Utah anyways, but Greenland gray wolves and Eurasian gray wolves most definitely are not here. And again, they shouldn't ever encounter each other. So where is that DNA coming from? The other 90% or 89% is a new unknown wolf that goes into the gray wolf clade, but they're like, you could tell, I can't remember how they read it up, but they're like, you could tell they're like, we're just going to focus on this 10% because we don't want to say something outlandish that will make our company look weird or make our stockholders like scratch their heads. They have like every canine sequence, like every fox, every wolf, every breed of dog, dingoes, even like the Papuan singing wolves. The little mini ones, right? Even those. They have all of these sequenced, and it came up with none of those. So 90% of this is a new wolf. Eric said, let's call it a crypto wolf. And I'm like, I don't like that. But everybody's so focused on the dire wolf part that people are just like, it's some kind of dire wolf. We don't know what it is. It didn't match with dire wolves, with regular dire wolves. The jaw we found, the size and shape matches subadult dire wolf. So just because it's morphologically the same doesn't mean that's what it is. But the DNA, 90% is something new to science. That should be big news. New species discovered in Uinta Basin in Utah, but nobody's talking about that. It's not what we focus on. Okay, this is kind of an anecdotal story worthy of sharing. So one night, this cameraman back here, this amazing documentary master, Charlie and I, we were like, let's do some astrophotography. So we went out to where this bubble is, and we start taking some photos and getting some good photos. And I'm like, you know what, Charlie? Sometimes this ranch is spooky and you feel it. You feel like you're being watched or you feel like something's off. And other times, like right now, it just feels like a normal ranch. And he's like, yeah, just feels like absolutely nothing. And then we hear this sound immediately, like, oh yeah. And we hear this sound. It sounds like if you shoot a .22 bullet across the desert, that combined with if you've ever thrown a rock at a water tower, or if you've ever been on a frozen lake when it's cracking and you hear that, doo, 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 doo. It was those two sounds combined. We're like, what? And we look over and see this ring expanding out. It wasn't illuminating, but it was an expansion ring, not a circle, a ring. And as it expanded, whatever it was, energy was moving outward at a pace that it was compressing the moisture on the end. If you watch like videos of bombs in slow motion, you'll see that. Sometimes you'll see a ring come out where you see water vapor forming. That's what it was like. It was like water vapor pushing out, and under the moonlight and under the stars, we're like, that's kind of, let's go back. Yeah, let's go back. Start walking back over to the ranch house. And Tom came out and he's like, you guys okay? We're like, yeah, why wouldn't we? Did you hear that sound? He's like, no, but did you see the power go off? We're like, what? No. And so there's the command center and the ranch house. And one of, I don't remember which one, but one of them, the power had gone and then had come back on. And he said, that's impossible. They're on the same breaker box. You can't have one go off and not the other. But it did. So it was like, that was kind of strange. Okay. The bubble, which they originally called the cone and then the dome, and now it's the bubble. This round circle, I'm just giving you a reference point because we're supposed to be talking about biology here. There's an anomaly, and they call it the bubble nowadays. That's roughly the size and shape of it. It moves, it like undulates, and so it can range out to on all sides about almost 200 feet wide or to in, but it moves, and it goes up about 1,000 feet. They've dropped stuff out of helicopters, and if they're over the bubble, it will bounce off. They have done big old huge fire things and rocket things underneath and had it cap on. I have watched and filmed myself, like a big old $40,000 drone that one of our drone guys was flying, and it goes up and it's working a grid, and once it gets to the bubble, it's like it's hit something, and then it has to recalibrate, and then it starts going through. Wild. Seems impossible. And every time I was flipping out, I'm like, this is right here, it's impossible. So this bubble, we don't know what it is, but I'm interested in the biology. I'm interested in what do life forms, how do they respond to this thing? You know, you take your magnets and your Geiger counters, your rockets, do your thing. But I want to know, how does life respond? So this is an anthill. This is an anthill on the ranch outside of the bubble. This is a strategic structure. You probably don't think much about ants. Ants are cold-blooded. They got to warm up in the morning. They have work to do. So they get rid of all the organics, and they gather up just sand, which is crystal. It's warm. It warms up quickly, and they make a cone. So that means the rising sun will hit it. They clear out. You ever see plants around an anthill? Not normally. They clear everything out. So those first rays of shallow sunlight will hit it and start to warm up the colony downward. This is a normal anthill. This is outside of the bubble. This is inside the bubble. This is not a normal anthill. There's grass all around it. The ants will come in and out. They're just like, it's like they were drunk. They were just kind of like, hey, what's going on, man? How's it? Yo, it's kind of cold. All of the anthills inside of the bubble are like this. All of the anthills outside of the bubble are standard cones. Nobody noticed that because who cares about ants? But these are bioindicators that are telling us something. We need to pay attention. This is the weirdest thing. On the bubble itself, on the border of the bubble itself, we were setting up posts. They're up now. They cover pretty much the whole bubble, and all these posts, every fifth one has like a GPS tracker, and then they all have like a solar panel on top to do a little light at night, so you can have a visual, so you can know, am I about to walk in the bubble? Am I walking out of it? What's going on here? We were putting these up, and we were on the bubble boundary, and all of a sudden, all these ants start biting us. That's normal, right? We look at them, and we film them. They were going crazy. They were going nowhere. They were coming from nowhere. They were not harvesting. They were not defending. They were just running around in circles in place, going nowhere. They were out of their minds. It was like somebody was scrambling their brains. Nature is not wasteful. You don't burn calories for no purpose. You burn calories to fight, to defend territory, to mate, to survive. You don't be like, I'm just going to go especially if you're a colonial animal, an ant that can't harvest things, what's the worth to the colony? All of them were doing this. They were just flipping out in circles. We filmed it, we documented it, and that was right on the border of the bubble, as if going on the border is not good for your brain. So we're like, let's get out of here. It's probably not a good thing. Okay, this is a plant called golden aster, and there's an area south of where they're drilling, which, by the way, this isn't a biology thing, but we got a little more time this round. You go back on Google Maps and go back in time. Where they're doing the drilling, that entire mesa is sinking in. And every time I go there, I'm like, that's gone deeper. That's getting way deeper. It's where they're drilling in, it is all sinking in. So keep tabs, because who knows what's actually in the mesa. It'll get interesting. But right below there, there's this pathway, and if you get above it, if you fly a drone, you're like, it looks like an airstrip. And like the way the plants are growing, it's this perfect rectangle. So we call it the landing strip. We don't know what it is. And this plant grows there. This is golden aster. Now I'm like, well, it's growing from the ground. Let's see what these plants tell us. I'm an animal man, not a plant man, but let's see what the plants have to say. So we did tests on the acidity and the alkalinity, and it turns out on the one side, the alkalinity was high. On the other side, the alkalinity was very high. And in the center of the runway, the acidity was very high, like ridiculously high. So don't know what that means, don't know what's going on with that, but there's definitely a biologically measurable difference from the same plant. Now, what about the plant itself? Well, look at the leaves. Here's leaves from either side of the runway, and here's leaves from in the runway. I've talked to some botanists who said this is consistent with radiation burns. Radiation doesn't just burn, it alters your DNA. And it scrambles. Your DNA is a code to replicate and make new cells. That's why when we get old, we start to, it's because our cells are doing a copy of a copy of a copy. Well, if you interrupt that and make really bad code, then you get this. And this is what it looks like. Looks like this is radiated plant material. So kind of interesting. Okay, so we started to find 2 years ago, I'm guessing 2 years ago. So Utah's in a drought. If you don't know the Southwest, we're 25 years into a drought. This is the second biggest drought in the past 2,000 years. We have the bristlecone pine tracking. We can see that this is the case. Animal populations are plummeting everywhere in the Southwest. All of a sudden on the ranch, 2 years ago, all the small animals exploded. Jackrabbits everywhere, cottontails everywhere. Turkey population exploded. Quail, antelope, ground squirrel, Uinta ground squirrel, the potguts, everything. Huge coveys of quail, magpies explode. Everything little exploded in numbers. We're like, this is not normal. It hasn't rained. We haven't had some big snowfall. What did this? How on earth could this happen? And we started to check scat samples, and we need to do DNA tests on what the scat is, but I think we know. We'll tell you in a second. Finding coyote bones. Something was killing and eating coyotes. Now, wolves do not do that. Wolves kill coyotes. They don't eat them. They're too closely related. It will be like you eating a chimpanzee. If I roasted a chimpanzee, there would be something off-putting about it to you. You'd be like, how about a steak? You know, you share too much DNA with a chimp. It's like, I'm like eating a human arm. Same thing. We see goshawks kill Cooper's hawks, but don't eat them. Wolves kill coyotes, but they won't eat them. They're too closely related. Something is killing and eating coyotes and raccoons on the ranch. Now, what do we know about raccoons? They live in and near the water. Coyotes will go anywhere. But raccoons, they swim. They spend a lot of time in the water. They eat crayfish and things like that. All my raccoon scat samples are filled with crayfish shells and scales and stuff. So something is killing and eating the coyotes. These are coyote bones in from some of the scat samples. And this is a guard hare. I need to get more pictures of this. The guard hare, it's passing through the digestive system. It's eating the fur. It's eating coyotes. So that wouldn't be a wolf. Not a dire wolf, not a gray wolf, not a Eurasian gray wolf or a Greenland gray wolf. It's none of those. So we need to do more on this. But there's big cat tracks on the ranch. These are some of the smaller ones. Nathan and Caleb have even much bigger, but this is enormous. We at first were dismissing these as gigantic cougar. Now, cougars are not that big. This is a cougar, which, by the way, anytime you see a skull, you got to flesh it out. This alive is about as big as a volleyball. But this is a cougar. Cougars kill deer and elk. Okay? They don't kill coyotes. They don't eat coyotes. So that's a cougar. They're not as big as you think. We do have cougars in Utah. We have quite a few. But these were bigger. But jaguars. I mentioned jaguars earlier. Jaguars used to live from Canada all the way down to Argentina. And that is a recent reduction. You might not know this. They are very aquatic. They love the water. They spend most of their time in and near the water. They are the most aquatic of cats. This is one killing a caiman, which is in the crocodilian family. Here's another picture of one killing one. They will get them from the water. What other animal is going to hunt basically a crocodile from the water? Crocodiles eat everything. These things go in the water. Come here, you! And they go and kill and eat caimans and alligators and crocodilians. It's nuts. They love the water. So again, these are the two jaguars we had during the Ice Age, the modern jaguar, which was here during the Ice Age, and the giant one. So, but a lot of people don't know that pioneers and settlers crossing the Great Plains documented seeing what they called leopards. They said there's bobcats, which have a short bob tail. There's the cougars that don't have spots. And then there's leopards, the big spotted cats. And the Native Americans talked about them. Lewis and Clark expedition says, yeah, the Native Americans tell us that there's also leopards with spots. Okay, so we think that at least into the 1800s we had them, even in the Great Plains. We know in the 1900s we still had jaguars being killed in Arizona and Texas, and they still are in Arizona and Texas. You can look it up. I'm going to be doing some videos on it soon. But not Utah. And so what of this? Well, what about black jaguars? Now, what is a black panther? A black panther is a really stupid, clunky term, and I hate it. And I'll tell you why. It's like pachyderm. What's a pachyderm? Elephant, right? That's what it's an elephant. No, pachyderm is a clunky term from like the 1700s that means thick skin. So it's like elephants, rhinos, and hippos. Those were the pachyderms. They're not related at all in any way, shape, or form other than they're mammals. But those were the pachyderms. Okay, well, and now people just say elephant is pachyderm. Well, they're not. They're proboscides. Okay, well, a black panther is not a species. Any in the Leo line, so like lions and leopards and jaguars and cougars, any of those that could technically interbreed, if they're melanistic, then it can be called a black panther. The two that are most often melanistic are jaguars, a lot of them are, and wild leopards in Africa. Fair number of them are, with some frequency. It's not very common though. So, well, what of that? Well, one more. So this is footage just off the ranch that Caleb hooked me up with. So Caleb is head of security there. So don't worry, we'll zoom in a second. So they were seeing this, and you probably can't hear them talking. They're saying, what is that? Is that a bear? Is that, it can't be a tiger. What is that? They think it's a black bear at first. It's so big that they think it's a black bear. Don't worry, we'll zoom in a second. Whatever this is, it's a cat. It has a long tail. And more importantly, we're going to show you in a second, it has shiny fur. Caleb has been back to... Caleb has been back to this site, and he has checked it out and gone up to those bushes, and he's like, yeah, this is way bigger even than a cougar. So let me go back. Oh, okay. So I was supposed to be 2 here. This is a cougar. Cougar has a similar appearance. Again, a cougar is much smaller than a jaguar. They're both powerful hunters. I mean, a cougar will go after elk. It's pretty impressive. Jaguars will tackle caiman in the water. But look at that fur. It is not shiny. Cougars have fur that absorbs light. Jaguars have fur that reflects light. I have a jaguar pelt It's from the 1940s up here. You can see it when you're done. And go ahead and lift it up and look it in the light. Even this jaguar pelt is shiny. The black ones are far shinier. If you have black fur, by definition, you are melanistic, and those melanin cells are even more reflective. So even though you're dark, you're shiny. So knowing that, let's see here. Okay, so let's take a look at this clip.
That's rather a bear or a...
It's not a bear.
Now watch when it walks away. Watch the tail. Look at the shine. I'm going to play it again.
I think such a pretty black but has a long tail. That's rather a bear or a...
It's not a bear.
See, the daughter's saying it's either a bear or a lion. She's like, that is not a bear. See that tail? It's got that hunchback. It's got those big, broad, big cat shoulders. And it's got the shiny luster reflecting off. And it's
That's rather a
shiny.
bear
It's got
or
that
a...
long tail. So everything would point to this being a jaguar. Now you're like, well, maybe it's a dark cougar. And that's what Caleb thought too. Caleb was like, yeah, it's probably like a dark cougar. You know, there's gonna be dark individuals. I looked it up. I work in this industry. I have friends who breed and train like the Tiger King guys, but less evil. People who train bears, people who train wolves, people who train lions, people who train jaguars, people who train leopards and raise them. I have friends in this industry and across the board. You can look it up yourself. Don't trust me. Go ahead and look it up. We have no actual documentation of melanistic cougars anywhere. In fact, in the zoological field, they have tried to breed that in. They were like, well, if we had a black cougar at a zoo, people would come to see that. That'd be really cool. Just like, you know, white tigers, they don't exist. There's no such thing as a white Siberian tiger. A Siberian tiger is orange. The white tigers, that's a recessive gene that they usually only get by breeding father to son, mother to daughter, or breeding siblings, and it usually results in severely disabled and mutated individuals. The few that are not end up in the zoos. And you're like, wow, we're going to pay extra money to go see the white Siberian tiger. It's not, okay? Same thing. These people have tried to breed a black cougar. They haven't been able to do it. Nobody's been able to do it. They don't do that. Now, people have said, well, what if maybe this is a pet keeper? Maybe somebody illegally had one. That's a valid point. Because I asked my friends in the big cat industry, and I said, what would happen if a jaguar, somebody had one illegally and got loose? They said it would have been raised from infancy by people. It would be seeking people out for food. Everybody everywhere would have seen this thing. This is a wild animal that knows how to slink and try to be unseen. This is not a meow, meow, give me food or I'm going to kill you. No, this thing is being sneaky. So here's the important thing. Where was it? Let's take a look. It was on Earth. Look at that. Okay, zoom in. Go ahead. There we go. Okay, so this is actually like a soda shop in Roosevelt. But it's going to be really important to see in a second where it was at. So we're going to zoom in this little hill behind, what is it, the Beach and Drink Company. You can go see it yourself. So it was climbing up on that hill. But that seems strange, but zoom out. You see that river there? This river is just like basically like 2 miles from Skinwalker Ranch. Following that river system, it goes straight to the ranch. A jaguar has a minimum range of 50 square miles. So that's well within the range of a jaguar. That little ridge right there, that's Skinwalker Ridge, that's Skinwalker Ranch. So that's part of its range. So whatever this thing is, this appears to be a black jaguar on Skinwalker Ranch, killing and eating the coyotes, and it was ranging out following the river. It probably goes up and down that river all the time looking for things to kill. It's not killing deer, it's not killing elk, it's not killing cattle. Wolves love to kill cattle. It's what they are built to do, to kill cattle and buffalo. They're built for it. No cattle have been killed, except for by aliens. UFO goes over the ranch, bleh, cow dies. But no super predator is eating the cattle, but it's eating coyotes and it's eating raccoons and it's following the river system. And this seems to be what it is, which is pretty cool. So, black jaguars, yeah. Yeah, so I don't know what to think about this. I think it's exciting. There's different ways to view this. I'm biological minded. It could just be that some individual has made its way all the way up from Mexico to the extreme far north. Again, we have them in Texas, we have them in Arizona. Why not northeastern Utah? It's pretty far. It's possible. But there's, again, this long history of people making the ridiculous claim that seems verifiable of Ice Age animals being on the ranch. We had jaguars here during the Ice Age. Could it be that you have something that came through from somewhere else and is wandering around? I don't know, but for sure, if you want to take away two things, there's a black jaguar roaming around Skinwalker Ranch and a UFO in broad daylight flew over a cow and killed it. Those are your two ends of the spectrum there. So interesting stuff. Then most of what happens on the ranch I can talk about. These are the things that I got authorization by Brandon to be able to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about this. I want to share two things. If you're new to some of this stuff, two things I highly recommend. First of all, this just came out, the age of disclosure. This is good for everybody. It has good information, but more importantly, it has our top government leaders right now, all the way up to as high as Marco Rubio, coming out and saying, yes, this is real. This is going on. We need to be addressing this. We need to be releasing this information. So I highly recommend, this is a good one to share with your friends, to be like, hey, let's watch this and let's have a conversation about it. What do we think is real? What do we think is not? What do we think is the nature of reality? This one, I highly recommend you watch this video too. Now, Moment of Contact came out a few years ago. This is the updated version. So the 2025 version, new revelations of alien encounters. Please watch this and just have an open mind and have a conversation afterwards. This will blow your mind. I just want you to watch it and be like, huh. Like, honestly, this isn't the most important topic, but this, I think, is one of the most important documentaries ever. If you want to have an honest conversation, like, let's be honest, we're not alone in the universe. What are the odds? Bajillions of planets, and we're the only ones out there. Doesn't mean there's aliens here. But it's like, are we so arrogant to think we're alone? No. So let's have a conversation about that. This video, really important, and I think it does good to have a conversation and to be aware of some of this stuff. So those are two that I highly recommend for talking about the subject. The Skinwalker Ranch show. It's a really good TV show. I enjoy it. It's also cheesy sometimes. It's not the fault of the people who are making it. It's not the fault of the people who are on it. It's the corporate guys at the end who are worried, like, well, let's do this and let's add this. And it's that end of things. It's not even the editors. They're good people who are sincere about what they're doing. They're trying to share. And again, not even a fraction of what happens on the ranch makes it out to the public. So, so that's just a whirlwind of the biology of the ranch. We're going to have some questions. I've got items up here you can look at. You're welcome to hold. You just take a paper towel you can take a look at. This is the rib that whatever bit through that. Got a saber-tooth cast, jaguar, cougar, and a dire wolf. And Wendy will pick on you to answer questions.
You said that you've seen other Ice Age animals on the ranch. What other animals did you have evidence of?
There's people who have claimed they have seen things, not that I've seen. There's people who have in the 90s, things that sound like sloths. There are people who have seen things that sound more like tigers, and I'm like, jaguar. But also, there's a very specific account of somebody who had something that, by today's standards, we would call it a velociraptor, something like a raptor thing that they shot at, and it followed bloody footprints. The Shermans followed it, as well as the OSAP team from our government who was there followed it, and it went up into a tree and then disappeared. So lots of different things. Also parrots. People say that they've seen parrots on the ranch, like tropical birds and tropical animals. I saw a bird about the size of a robin, like a cardinal. We don't have cardinals in Utah. I'm a bird man. Whatever this thing was, it was red, and it had a short tail, and it was 100% red. But it looked just like some native bird. I went through all my field guides. I'm like, I don't know what this is. But I did see that, and I'm like, okay, if you're some farmer in the 1990s, whatever that thing is, you might see that and think it's a parrot. But so I've seen that, but not sure beyond that. But I know there's so much that doesn't get talked about. There's so much that doesn't get talked about.
Were there any more whole bite marks bull-shaped bite?
Not that I found. A lot of the bones were chomped off of, or things biting from the side and biting off pieces and trying to peel off meat from it. That's the only one I found with a bite all the way through. That was kind of a whirlwind day, so there could have been more, but that's the only one that I found for sure.
So it sounds like only the smaller animals do not decompose. Is that true?
Yep. Yeah, the small land animals that aren't in the water, because that thing in the water did, but small land animals don't decompose according to our normal rules. Birds, it's a crapshoot. Could be anything. Could be some weird thing. And the bigger things do decompose, but then the skeleton will alter in weird ways.
Thank you.
What do you think? What's your top 2 craziest things that you've seen there that you know about?
Let's see. I mean, having that falcon fly through the mesa and come out the other side, that was really wild. I had a thing I don't feel comfortable talking about, but I'll just say I had a thing where I think that my mind was interrupted and my perception of reality was interrupted and verified on camera and by other people present. So I don't necessarily want to talk about it here, but that was kind of unnerving. Oh, I'm gonna say the bed one. That was trippy.
Yeah.
That was my first time to the ranch. I was sleeping in the ranch in the command center bedroom, and I'm like, this is weird. Skinwalker Ranch. Ooh, spooky, spooky. I'm gonna sleep with the lights on. So I leave the lights on. So I get on the bed and I'm sitting there looking, and I'm like, there's no internet connection there. So I'm trying to like look at old pictures of my phone to distract myself. And all of a sudden I look down, and on my bed, it was like somebody grabbed the sheets and was like pulling them down, and I'm like, nope. So I grab them and I start pulling back up, and it starts pulling back against me. And I'm like, I refuse to entertain this at all. So I got all the blankets all on my bed, and I wrapped them in between my legs. So it was 100% on, so nothing can pull. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to ignore this 100%. I am not even going to acknowledge this, because I was still so trippy. And did I talk about, the Tom and Candace shooting the thingy? Okay, I can't, because we did the earlier show. That was another one. Like my first time to the ranch, Tom and Candace made that ranch house magical. It was beautiful. We came in. There's all these retro things. They have all these prisms hanging up in the window, and then the sun sets. They're like, "Oh, Ben, look, it's rainbow o'clock," because the sun's coming through. We're like, "Wow!" But then I'm like, "What's with all the guns by both of the doors?" And they're like, and they're kind of sheepish about it because they didn't know me yet, really. And they had said that, like, well, the dog wolf thing came in and attacked William. So the dog that lives on the ranch, William, some black dog wolf thing, as they put it, sheepishly, came in and attacked the dog. And when I went there, the dog was wearing a cone, and they even had the local medicine man come in and do a blessing on the dog. The vet had already stitched him up, but they had a medicine man come and do a blessing while I was there. So that was trippy. They're like this beautiful people, wonderful people, and they had made that home a beautiful place. But like by every door, there's all these guns, like in case anything comes charging in again. But I'd really have to think on what was the trippiest thing. But I mean, some of the little things just blow my mind. Again, what could impact your internal gut bacteria? If you die on the ranch, what is impacting your gastrointestinal bacteria? That is huge. That's not external. That's inside of you. I'm dead. Oh, immediately that bacteria starts eating your lining of your stomach and your lining of your intestines. Immediately, within 2 minutes. So it doesn't happen to the little stuff. That is mind-blowing to a biologist. To a normal person who's like, so it didn't bloat, whatever. It's like, no, this is, again, if an alien showed up and said, hi, cool, hi, you exist, good to know. That's not that weird. That's just exciting, but it's not that weird. So, yeah.
So you mentioned that you had approved with Brandon the things that you shared with us. Not asking you to share something he didn't approve, but how many things did you present to Brandon that he said, don't share that?
So I had 3 biggies that he wouldn't let me do, and I had 4 or 5 that he said, we might still use that later on. We might bring that out later, so why don't you hold off on that and we'll bring it later. But he was pretty good about it. Because most of these things, it's like we've been sitting on these things for years. It's like, let's get it out. Let's have people talking about it, discussing it, and sharing their views. That's what we need. We need people, we need other minds talking about this and telling us where we're wrong. We need other people being like, here's what you didn't think. Oh, okay, yeah, that's good to know. Because we're dealing with vocabularies that are new for all of us.
Are they going to, Governor force Bigelow to release the things that he learned this time there?
So they kind of shafted us. So here's what happened. We were trying to go have government disclosure on whatever the government itself has, including those Bigelow files. And the government was like, no. And then they're like, well, actually, yeah, the first time they tried to do the UAP Disclosure Act under Chuck Schumer 2 whatever's ago, they tried, but then the government came in and they rewrote a few things saying anybody who has files or actual material from like UAPs or UFOs supposedly, if you have files, if you have footage, then that becomes government property. That's why the UAP Disclosure Act did not go through, is because people like Jacques Vallée and stuff who have apparently stuff, they're like, well, I don't, and Brandon was like, no, so you could just take the whole ranch. The government under that could then just be like, well, the ranch has paranormal stuff and UFO stuff, so we're just going to take it by eminent domain. So it's a battle. It's going on behind the scenes. They try to do a sneaky, dirty thing. We were trying to get the word out, still trying to get the word out, but it's just a battle, and there's powers behind the scenes that are fighting back and forth on it. So they're trying to. Stuff keeps getting leaked. If you watch this, you will find out some of these people, like one of the dudes had a heart attack and almost died, and his colleague had a heart attack and did die. And they're like, oh, if I had died, it's just going to the grave. I need to get this out. I need to say before I die, I need to get this public. So a lot of these old timers are starting to get the stuff out because they're like, who cares? We need the truth out, whatever the truth actually is.
I was actually raised out in that area.
Oh, yeah?
Tommy is a relative.
That's wild.
So, curious, have you seen the green orbs? Have you heard any stories about them?
Up here or down there?
There.
I haven't down there. I have on the ranch. I've seen stuff on the ranch.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Blue, size of a marble, I've seen, and very much interacting with your mind. Very much able to, like, still recordable, still able to be filmed by other people, but very much in connection to who you are, what's going on in your head, the stuff that I've seen. I mean, they've caught big stuff on film on the ranch. I mean, big, huge, broad daylight. Here's something the size of a, like what, the big old, that big weather balloon thing we had, remember as a kid? Like a huge, 5, 6, 7 feet wide, floating along 5 feet above the ground. We've seen that and caught that on film. Have stuff just show up randomly. We were filming one night in the river, and we're done, and everybody's done, like all the camera crew's all done, and I'm like, you guys, look. They're like, what? And I'm like, look up there. There's this big old huge, it's maybe like a football field away, maybe like 80 to 100 feet up, just glowing bright, big, just sitting there. And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, turn the cameras back on. And they're like, oh. So I just filmed it with my phone, but everybody was so exhausted. And it's like, yeah, this stuff happens with enough regularity that it was like, we're done for the day. Whatever this is came to say hi. Yeah, come back tomorrow. It's just nuts.